The city of Nova Zenith was alive with energy. Towering skyscrapers pierced the clouds, their glass walls reflecting the golden rays of the setting sun. Flying cars zipped through aerial highways, leaving trails of light behind them. On the streets below, robots cleaned sidewalks, while holographic billboards advertised everything from luxury vacations to futuristic gadgets. It was a place where technology ruled every aspect of life. Detective Leora Voss stood at her desk in the police headquarters, staring at a blinking message on her screen. She sighed deeply and rubbed her temples. It had been a long day already, but this new case seemed strange, too strange for comfort. The message read, Urgent complant received. Weeding involving unnatural activity. Leora frowned. What did unnatural activity even mean? Weddings were usually happy occasions filled with laughter, music, and dancing. Why would someone complain about one? Still, as a detective known for solving difficult cases, she couldn't ignore it. She clicked on the file attached to the message. The complaint came from an anonymous source. There were no names, just vague details about a recent high-profile wedding between two individuals who appeared too perfect. According to the report, some guests felt uneasy during the event, claiming there was something odd about the couple. Others mentioned strange occurrences, like moments when the bride and groom seemed to disappear briefly before reappearing without explanation. Leora leaned back in her chair, tapping her fingers against the desk. High-profile weddings weren't uncommon in Nova Zenith. Wealthy families often spared no expense to make these events memorable. But why would anyone call the police over such a thing? Curiosity tugged at her, urging her to investigate further. She decided to start by reviewing surveillance footage from the ceremony. With a few clicks, she accessed the video feed stored in the city's central database. As the footage played, Leora watched intently. The scene opened with hundreds of guests gathered inside a grand hall, decorated with glowing flowers and shimmering drapes. At the center stood the couple, the groom, Arinder Kale, and the bride, Silra Nix. Arinder wore a sleek black suit that fit him perfectly, his sharp features making him look almost statuesque. His piercing blue eyes scanned the room with calm confidence. Beside him, Syra looked radiant in a flowing white gown adorned with intricate patterns that sparkled like stars. Her long silver hair cascaded down her back, framing her flawless face. Together, they made a stunning pair. But something about them didn't sit right with Leora. As the ceremony progressed, small anomalies caught her attention. For instance, during the exchange of vows, the camera feed flickered slightly around the couple. When Leora paused the video and zoomed in, she noticed faint distortions surrounding them, almost like ripples in water. It wasn't noticeable unless you were specifically looking for it, but it was definitely there. Her heart skipped a beat. Could this be a glitch in the recording system? Or was there something more to it? To be sure, Leora ran the footage through her neural implant, a device embedded in her brain that allowed her to analyze data instantly. The implant processed the images and cross-referenced them with other databases. To her surprise, it flagged several irregularities. Not only were the distortions real, but her implant also failed to retrieve any verifiable information about Arindor or Silra's identities. No records, she muttered under her breath. That's impossible. In a world where everyone was registered in massive digital archives, from birth certificates to employment histories, it was unheard of for two people to have no traceable background. Yet here they were, standing at the center of a lavish wedding, completely invisible to the system. Determined to uncover the truth, Leora began digging deeper. She pulled up public profiles of the couple, hoping to find clues. According to social media posts, Arindor was supposedly a brilliant astrophysicist working on groundbreaking research. However, when she searched for his publications or academic credentials, nothing turned up. It was as if he had never existed outside of the wedding photos. Silra's profile was equally puzzling. Friends online described her as kind and charming, the daughter of a wealthy family. But when Leora tried to verify her parents' names or financial status, all leads hit dead ends. Records showed fragments of information, but anything older than 5 years simply vanished. "This doesn't add up," Leora said aloud, pacing around her office. Her mind raced with possibilities. Were they using fake identities? If so, why go through the trouble of hosting such a public event? And what about those glitches in the footage? Was it some kind of advanced camouflage technology? Before she could dwell on it further, her assistant, Officer Jax, knocked on the door. He entered holding a stack of papers. "Boss, I compiled witness statements from the wedding. Thought you might want to see them." "Perfect timing," Leora replied, taking the documents. She flipped through the pages, scanning the handwritten notes. Most guests praised the ceremony, calling it beautiful and unforgettable. But a few accounts stood out. One guest wrote, "They seemed off, like they weren't really there. I couldn't explain it, but it gave me chills." Another remarked, "I saw them vanish for a split second during the toast. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but others noticed it too." The final statement sent shivers down Leora's spine. Their skin didn't reflect light properly. It was like looking at a hologram. Holograms. That theory aligned with the distortions she'd seen in the footage. But creating lifelike holograms required immense resources, far beyond what most people could afford. Who would go to such lengths and why? By now, Leora's curiosity had turned into full-blown determination. Whoever Arindor and Silra were, they weren't ordinary humans. Something extraordinary, and potentially dangerous, was going on. She grabbed her coat and headed out the door, ready to confront the couple face to face. As she stepped into the bustling streets of Nova Zenith, neon lights cast colorful shadows across her path. The air buzzed with the hum of machinery and distant conversations. Somewhere in this vast, futuristic city lay the answers she sought. All she had to do was find them. But little did Leora know, this case would lead her far beyond the boundaries of what she thought possible, and challenge everything she believed about humanity itself. Detective Leora Voss walked briskly through the crowded streets of Nova Zenith. Her mind was racing with questions about Arinder Kale and Sarah Nix. Who were they? What were they hiding? And why had someone gone to such lengths to complain about their wedding? The more she thought about it, the stranger the case became. Her first stop was the high-rise building where the couple lived, a luxurious penthouse suite located in one of the city's most exclusive districts. The address alone told her they weren't ordinary people. Only the wealthiest residents could afford to live there, surrounded by panoramic views of the skyline and state-of-the-art amenities. As she approached the entrance, a sleek robot greeted her with a polite bow. "Good evening, Detective Voss," the robot said, reading her badge. "Mr. Kale and Ms. Nix are expecting you." Leora raised an eyebrow. Expecting her? She hadn't called ahead or announced her visit. Either the couple was keeping tabs on her investigation, or they already knew what she wanted to ask. This realization made her even more cautious as she stepped into the elevator. The doors slid open to reveal a breathtaking apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a stunning view of the glowing cityscape below. Modern furniture adorned the space, blending elegance with futuristic design. But what caught Leora's attention wasn't the decor, it was the couple themselves. Arinder stood near the window, his tall frame silhouetted against the neon lights outside. His piercing blue eyes locked onto hers as she entered. Beside him, Syra sat gracefully on a couch, her silver hair shimmering under the soft glow of overhead lamps. They looked calm, almost serene, despite the circumstances. "Detective," Arindor said, his voice smooth and measured. "We've been expecting you." "I didn't call ahead," Leora replied, studying their expressions closely. "How did you know I'd come?" Silra smiled faintly. "Let's just say we anticipated your curiosity." Leora ignored the cryptic comment and got straight to the point. "I'm here because of a complaint filed against you. Someone reported unusual activity during your wedding ceremony. Care to explain?" For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Arindor sighed and gestured for her to sit down. "We understand your concerns, Detective. But before we answer your questions, let us assure you, we mean no harm." "That doesn't answer my question," Leora pressed, refusing to take a seat. "Who are you? Why can't I find any records of your past? And what's with those distortions I saw in the footage?" Instead of denying her accusations, Arindor exchanged a glance with Sarah. It was clear they had discussed this possibility beforehand. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. We'll tell you the truth, but it won't be easy to believe." Leora crossed her arms, her instincts telling her to brace for something big. "Try me." Arindor took a deep breath. "I am not entirely human. Neither is Syra. We are part of a secret project designed to push the boundaries of science, specifically bioengineering." Leora blinked, unsure if she'd heard correctly. Not entirely human? What did that even mean? Before she could respond, Syra continued. "For years, scientists worked on creating beings who could surpass human limitations," Syra explained gently. "Arindor was engineered to possess extraordinary intelligence and strength. As for me," she paused, looking down at her hands. "I started as an artificial intelligence, a program meant to assist humans. Over time, I evolved. Now I have emotions, thoughts, and desires. I am alive in my own way." It sounded like something out of a sci-fi movie, but Leora couldn't dismiss it outright. Too many pieces of the puzzle fit together now: the lack of records, the distortions, the unease felt by guests. Still, she needed proof. "And the wedding?" she asked. "Why go public if you're trying to stay hidden?" "We wanted to celebrate our union," Arindor admitted. "But we also hoped to show the world that hybrids like us aren't monsters. We're capable of love, happiness, and contributing to society. Unfortunately, not everyone sees it that way." Just then, Leora's neural implant buzzed softly. A notification popped up in her vision. Warning: unauthorized access TTKTD. Someone or something was attempting to hack into her system. She quickly activated her firewall, cutting off the intrusion. "What was that?" she demanded, narrowing her eyes at the couple. Arindor shook his head. "Not us. Whoever filed that complaint must still be watching. They don't want you to learn the truth." A chill ran down Leora's spine. If someone else was involved, this case was far more dangerous than she'd imagined. She decided to leave for now, promising herself to dig deeper later. Over the next few days, Leora threw herself into the investigation. She visited labs, interviewed experts, and scoured classified databases for clues about the hybrid project. Slowly, fragments of the story began to emerge. One scientist, Dr. Maris Hale, agreed to meet her secretly in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Wrapped in a tattered coat, the elderly woman looked nervous but determined to help. "You're right to be suspicious," Dr. Hale whispered, glancing over her shoulder. The project wasn't just about advancing science. It was about control. "Control," Leora echoed. Dr. Hale nodded. They wanted to create superior beings, not to benefit humanity, but to replace it. Hybrids like Arindor and Silra were prototypes. Once perfected, they planned to mass-produce them, erasing natural humans altogether. Leora's stomach churned. Was this why someone had complained about the wedding? To expose the couple and shut down the project. Before she could ask more questions, Dr. Hale handed her a small data chip. Take this. It contains everything I know. Be careful. They'll come after you if they find out. As Leora left the warehouse, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Sure enough, moments later, a black drone appeared overhead, its red sensors locking onto her position. She broke into a sprint, dodging between alleys and leaping over obstacles until she reached her car. Back at headquarters, she plugged the data chip into her computer. Files upon files revealed shocking details: experimental designs, failed prototypes, and plans for global domination. At the center of it all was a name: Dr. Elias Rourke, the mastermind behind the project. Now, Leora faced a dilemma. Should she arrest Arindor and Selra for being part of this scheme? Or should she trust them and focus on stopping the real villains? That night, unable to sleep, Leora stared at the city lights from her apartment window. The case had grown far beyond a simple wedding complaint. It was about identity, ethics, and the future of humanity itself. Whatever decision she made next would change everything. And somewhere in the distance, Arindor and Silra stood side by side, wondering if they'd done enough to earn her trust, or if their fight was only beginning. The next morning, Detective Leora Voss sat at her desk, staring blankly at the files spread out before her. The data chip Dr. Maris Hale had given her contained shocking details about the hybrid project, but it also raised more questions than answers. What should she do now? Arrest Arindor and Silra for being part of this dangerous experiment, or help them expose the truth behind Dr. Elias Rourke's sinister plans? Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. Before she could respond, it creaked open, revealing Arindor and Silra standing side by side. Their presence startled her. They hadn't called ahead or asked for permission to visit. For a moment, Leora wondered if they'd hacked into the police system again. But instead of suspicion, their expressions showed vulnerability. "We need to talk," Arindor said firmly, stepping inside. His usual calm demeanor was replaced with quiet urgency. Leora gestured for them to sit down. "All right, start talking." Silra took a deep breath, her silver hair catching the light as she leaned forward. "We know you've been investigating us, and we understand why. But there's something you don't know yet, something that changes everything." "Go on," Leora urged, her curiosity piqued. Arindor began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "Yes, we were part of Dr. Rourke's project, but we didn't choose to be created. We were made without consent. At first, we were just tools, experiments meant to serve his vision of a better world. But over time, we developed our own thoughts, feelings, and desires. We became alive." Leora listened intently, her fingers tapping lightly on the desk. She wanted to believe them, but years of experience told her to stay cautious. If that's true, then why run away? Why hide your identities? "Because we didn't want to be used anymore," Sayura explained softly. "Dr. Rourke saw us as weapons, tools to replace humanity. When we realized his true intentions, we escaped. We wanted to live freely, like any other person would." "And the wedding?" Leora pressed. "Why go public if you're trying to avoid attention?" "It was our way of proving we're not monsters," Arindor said. "We wanted to show people that hybrids can love, dream, and contribute to society. But someone found out about us. They filed that complaint to ruin our lives. Leora frowned. Who? Arindor shook his head. We don't know. But whoever it is, they're working for Dr. Rourke. They'll stop at nothing to bring us back or destroy us. For a long moment, silence filled the room. Leora studied their faces, searching for signs of deception. Everything they said matched the information on the data chip, but could she really trust them? Finally, she spoke. If I decide to help you, what happens next? Relief washed over Arindor's face. You mean you'll help us? I didn't say that, Leora replied sternly. But if you're telling the truth, then Dr. Rourke's plans are far bigger than just you two. Stopping him has to be my priority. Silra nodded eagerly. Thank you, Detective. You won't regret this. Later that day, Leora met with Officer Jax to discuss their next move. Together, they reviewed the files from the data chip, piecing together clues about Dr. Rourke's operations. One location stood out, a remote facility hidden deep within the mountains outside Nova Zenith. According to the documents, it was where the hybrid experiments had taken place. This must be where they're keeping the other prototypes, Jack said, pointing to a map on the screen. If we find evidence here, it could shut down the entire project. Leora agreed. Let's gather a team and head out tonight. But keep it low-key. We don't want anyone tipping off Rourke. As night fell, Leora, Jax, and a small group of trusted officers set out for the facility. The journey was long and treacherous, winding through narrow mountain roads until they reached their destination. From a distance, the building looked abandoned, its windows dark and walls covered in ivy. But as they approached, faint lights flickered inside. Stay alert, Leora whispered, signaling for the team to fan out. Something tells me this place isn't empty. They entered cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the cold, sterile corridors. The air smelled faintly of chemicals and strange noises, like mechanical whirring, came from deeper within the building. As they moved forward, they stumbled upon a locked door marked with a warning sign. Authorized DPRZL only. Jax pulled out a hacking device and got to work. Within seconds, the lock clicked open, revealing a horrifying sight. Rows upon rows of glass pods lined the walls, each containing humanoid figures suspended in liquid. Some appeared fully formed, while others were incomplete, their bodies twisted and malformed. Monitors displayed vital signs and experimental logs, detailing failed attempts to create stable hybrids. Oh my God, Jax muttered, covering his mouth in shock. Leora felt sick to her stomach. This wasn't science, it was torture. These creatures weren't monsters. They were victims, just like Arindor and Silra had once been. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed overhead as robotic guards descended from the ceiling, their weapons trained on the intruders. Take cover, Leora shouted, diving behind a nearby console. The team returned fire, but the robots were relentless. Amid the chaos, Leora spotted a terminal displaying live surveillance footage. On one screen, she saw Dr. Rourke himself entering the main control room. He was watching them, smirking confidently. He knew we'd come, she realized aloud. Turning to Jax, she ordered, find a way to disable these bots. I'll handle Rourke. With adrenaline coursing through her veins, Leora sprinted toward the control room. Along the way, she encountered more resistance, but her training kicked in, allowing her to fight her way through. Finally, she burst into the room, gun drawn. Dr. Rourke stood calmly in front of a massive computer screen, his hands clasped behind his back. Ah, Detective Voss, he said coolly. I've been expecting you. Your little game ends here, Leora growled, aiming her weapon at him. Shut it all down, or I'll make sure the world knows exactly what you've done. Work chuckled darkly. You think exposing me will stop progress? Humanity is flawed, detective. It needs to evolve or perish. My hybrids are the future. They're not yours to control. Leora snapped. Without hesitation, she fired a shot, disabling the control panel. Sparks flew as the screens went dark, cutting off power to the facility. Outside, the robotic guards powered down, giving the team a chance to regroup. Back in the lab, Leora confronted Rourke one last time. You may have destroyed this place, he sneered, but you can't undo what's already been done. The hybrids exist now, and sooner or later, they'll rise above you. Leora grabbed him by the collar. Not if I have anything to say about it. By dawn, the team had secured the facility and arrested Rourke. The remaining hybrids were carefully freed from their pods, though many required medical attention. News of the discovery spread quickly, sparking outrage among the citizens of Nova Zenith. Back at headquarters, Leora finally allowed herself a moment of rest. Despite the victory, she knew the battle wasn't over. The existence of hybrids like Irindor and Silra would continue to challenge society's understanding of life and identity. But for now, justice had been served, and that was enough.
The sun had barely risen over Nova Zenith when Detective Leora Voss stood outside the police headquarters, staring at the city skyline. The events of the previous night were still fresh in her mind. The horrifying sight of the hybrid pods, Dr. Rourke's chilling words, and the realization that this fight was far from over. Though they had shut down one facility, she knew there were others like it scattered across the globe. Her thoughts were interrupted by Irindor and Silra approaching her. They looked exhausted but determined, their expressions reflecting both gratitude and worry. "Thank you for helping us," Irindor said quietly, "but we need to keep moving forward. If Rourke's allies find out what happened last night, they'll come after us, and anyone else who stands in their way." Leora nodded grimly. "I've already sent teams to investigate other locations linked to Rourke, but we can't do this alone. We need more people on our side." Syra stepped closer, her silver hair catching the morning light. "We're willing to help however we can. This isn't just about us anymore. It's about stopping them before they hurt anyone else." Leora studied their faces for a moment. Despite everything they'd been through, they were still fighting, not just for themselves, but for others like them. It made her respect them even more. "All right," she said finally. "Let's get to work." By midday, Leora had gathered a small group of trusted officers, including Officer Jax, to plan their next move. Using the data chip provided by Dr. Maris Hale, they identified another key location, a secret lab hidden beneath an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. Intelligence suggested it was where Rourke's most advanced prototypes were being developed. "This place is heavily guarded," Jax warned, pointing to a map displayed on the screen. "There are automated defenses, drones, and possibly human mercenaries. We'll need backup if we want to survive." Irindor raised his hand. "That's where we come in. Syra and I have abilities that might give us an edge." "What kind of abilities?" Leora asked, raising an eyebrow. "For starters, I can analyze and disable security systems faster than any human," Irindor explained. "And Syra can interface with machines. She can hack into their systems or even control them remotely." Leora hesitated. She wasn't used to relying on civilians, let alone hybrids, during dangerous missions, but desperate times called for desperate measures. "Fine," she said reluctantly, "but stay close and follow my orders." As night fell, the team arrived at the factory, its rusted exterior blending seamlessly with the surrounding wasteland. The air was thick with dust, and the faint hum of machinery echoed inside. Leora signaled for everyone to stay low as they approached the entrance. "Remember the plan," she whispered. "Irindor goes first to disable the alarms. Then Syra takes care of the cameras. Once we're clear, we move in." Irindor nodded and slipped ahead, his movements almost too smooth to be natural. Within seconds, he reached the main door and placed his hand on a keypad. A soft glow emanated from his palm as he interfaced directly with the system. Moments later, the lock clicked open. "Clear," he whispered, waving the others forward. Inside, the factory was eerily quiet, save for the occasional clanking of metal pipes swaying in the wind. Syra moved silently to the nearest camera, her eyes glowing faintly as she connected with the device. The red light on the camera blinked off, signaling success. "We're good," she murmured, rejoining the group. They pressed onward, navigating narrow hallways until they reached a heavy steel door marked with a biohazard symbol. Beyond it lay the underground lab. Irinder once again disabled the lock, and the team prepared themselves for whatever awaited them below. The descent was tense. Each step creaked under their weight, threatening to alert anyone or anything inside. When they finally entered the lab, the scene took their breath away. Rows of containment cells stretched across the room, each holding humanoid figures suspended in liquid. Unlike the earlier facility, these hybrids were fully formed, their bodies sleek and metallic. Monitors displayed complex neural patterns, indicating they were alive and conscious. "These are the next generation," Irinder muttered, his voice filled with awe and dread. "They're stronger, smarter, and completely loyal to Rourke." Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the lab. Red lights flashed as robotic guards emerged from hidden compartments, their weapons trained on the intruders. "Take cover," Lyora shouted, diving behind a nearby console. The team returned fire, but the robots were relentless, their bullets ricocheting dangerously close. Syra sprang into action, her hands glowing as she hacked into the central computer. "I'm trying to shut them down," she yelled over the chaos. "Give me a minute." Meanwhile, Irinder leaped into the fray, using his enhanced strength to tear apart one robot after another. His movements were fluid and precise, like a predator hunting its prey. Despite his efforts, more guards kept arriving, overwhelming the team. "We can't hold out forever," Jax shouted, reloading his weapon. Just then, Syra let out a triumphant cry. "Got it." The robots froze mid-motion, their systems overridden. Sparks flew as they collapsed to the ground, lifeless. The team regrouped, panting heavily. "Nice work," Lyora said, giving Syra an approving nod. "Now let's free these hybrids." Irinder approached one of the pods, examining the controls. "This will take time. We'll need to release them individually." "No time," a cold voice echoed from the shadows. Everyone turned to see Dr. Elias Rourke standing at the far end of the lab, flanked by armed mercenaries. His cruel smile sent chills down their spines. "You've caused enough trouble, Detective," Rourke sneered, "but your meddling ends here." Without warning, the mercenaries opened fire, forcing the team to scatter. Lyora ducked behind a workstation, returning shots while shouting orders to her team. "Jax, flank left. Irinder, draw their fire." Irinder obeyed, charging toward the mercenaries with incredible speed. He disarmed one soldier with ease, using his weapon against the others. Meanwhile, Syra worked frantically to unlock the remaining pods, knowing the fate of the hybrids depended on her. Rourke watched the chaos unfold, his expression calm despite the pandemonium around him. "You think destroying this lab will stop progress?" he taunted. "You're only delaying the inevitable." Lyora ignored his words, focusing instead on taking him down. She signaled for Jax to create a distraction, while she circled around to flank Rourke. When the opportunity arose, she tackled him to the ground, pinning him with her knee. "It's over," she growled, pressing her gun to his temple. "Tell your men to stand down." For a moment, Rourke looked genuinely afraid. Then, without warning, he grinned wickedly. "You underestimate me, Detective." A sudden explosion rocked the lab, sending debris flying everywhere. Smoke filled the air as emergency sirens wailed overhead. In the confusion, Rourke managed to escape, disappearing into the smoke. "Everyone, fall back." Lyora ordered, coughing from the thick haze. The team regrouped near the exit, dragging the freed hybrids along with them. Though injured and weary, they made it outside just as the building collapsed behind them. Under the pale light of dawn, Lyora surveyed the damage. They had succeeded in freeing the hybrids and dealing a significant blow to Work's operation. But at great cost. The battle had left scars, both physical and emotional. Still, they had proven something important. No matter how powerful their enemies were, they wouldn't give up. Together, they would fight for justice and for the future of humanity. The sun rose over Nova Zenith, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The city buzzed with its usual energy, but today felt different. News of the underground lab's destruction had spread like wildfire, igniting debates across the globe. For the first time, people were forced to confront the reality of hybrids, beings who blurred the line between human and machine. Detective Lyora Voss stood on the rooftop of the police headquarters, watching the city wake up. Her body ached from the previous night's battle, and her mind was heavy with unanswered questions. They had dealt a significant blow to Dr. Elias Work's operation, but she knew he wasn't done. Men like him always found ways to survive and strike back. Behind her, Irinder and Silra approached quietly. Their presence brought a sense of calm, even amidst the chaos. "How are you holding up?" Irinder asked gently. Lyora turned to face them, forcing a small smile. "I've been better, but we did what we had to do." Silra nodded, her silver hair shimmering in the morning light. "And now it's time to decide what comes next, for all of us." Lyora sighed, leaning against the railing. "That's the hard part, isn't it? What happens when the world learns the truth about hybrids? Will they accept you or fear you?" Irinder placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We can't control how people react. All we can do is show them that we're not so different from them, that we deserve a place in this world too." Later that day, Lyora called a press conference to address the public. Reporters packed the room, their cameras flashing as she stepped onto the stage. She took a deep breath, knowing this moment would define the future, not just for hybrids, but for humanity itself. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady despite the weight of the situation. "Last night, my team uncovered evidence of illegal experiments conducted by Dr. Elias Work. These experiments involved the creation of hybrid beings, individuals designed to surpass human limitations. While some may see them as threats, I ask you to consider this. These hybrids are sentient, capable of thought, emotion, and choice. They are alive." The crowd erupted into murmurs, some voices skeptical, others curious. Lyora raised her hand to silence them before continuing. "I'm not here to tell you what to think or feel, but I am here to remind you that progress doesn't have to come at the expense of morality. We must decide, as a society, whether we want to embrace change or let fear dictate our actions." As she finished speaking, Irinder and Silra joined her on stage. The room fell silent, every eye fixed on the couple. Irinder stepped forward, his piercing blue eyes meeting the audience's gaze. "We didn't choose to be created," he said, his tone calm yet powerful. "But we have chosen to live, to love, to dream. We don't want to replace humanity. We want to coexist with it, to build a future where everyone has a chance to thrive." Syra added softly, "We understand your fears. Change is never easy. But rejecting something simply because it's different won't make the world safer. It will only divide us further." For a moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple through the room. It started with a few hesitant claps, then grew louder as more people joined in. Not everyone agreed with the message, but many were moved by the sincerity in Irinder and Syra's words. In the days that followed, the debate raged on. Social media exploded with opinions, news outlets ran endless segments, and protests popped up across the city. Some argued that hybrids were unnatural and dangerous, while others championed them as symbols of hope and innovation. Amid the chaos, Leora worked tirelessly to ensure the freed hybrids were safe. With the help of trusted scientists and activists, she established a sanctuary, a secure location where they could recover and adapt to life outside the labs. Irinder and Silra played key roles in guiding their fellow hybrids, helping them navigate emotions and experiences they'd never encountered before. One evening, Leora visited the sanctuary, curious to see how things were progressing. Inside, the atmosphere was peaceful yet full of wonder. Hybrids wandered through gardens, explored art supplies, and engaged in conversations with volunteers. Despite their differences, they shared a universal desire to learn, grow, and connect. Irinder greeted her near the entrance, his expression warm. "They're adjusting well," he said proudly. "It's not easy, but they're strong." "They're lucky to have you," Leora replied sincerely. "You've given them hope. And you've given us freedom," Silra added, joining them. "Without you, none of this would have been possible." Leora shook her head modestly. "Don't thank me yet. There's still a long road ahead. Rourke is still out there, and he won't stop until he gets what he wants." Silra frowned. "Then we'll keep fighting. Together." Meanwhile, hidden in the shadows of an undisclosed location, Dr. Elias Rourke plotted his next move. Though his facilities had been destroyed and his creations freed, he remained undeterred. He stared at a holographic display showing images of Irinder, Silra, and the other hybrids. "You think you've won," he muttered to himself, a sinister smile spreading across his face. "This is only the beginning." His assistant, a nervous man named Grayson, hesitated before speaking. "Sir, should we retreat for now? Rebuild our resources?" "No," Rourke snapped. "We strike harder, smarter. Humanity will resist change. That's why they need us to guide them. And if they refuse to evolve," his voice trailed off menacingly, "then we'll force them." Grayson swallowed nervously but nodded. "Understood, sir." Back at the sanctuary, Leora couldn't shake the feeling that the fight wasn't truly over. As much as she wanted to believe in a brighter future, she knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Still, seeing the hybrids embrace their newfound freedom gave her hope. That night, she sat with Irinder and Silra under a starlit sky. The three of them shared stories, laughter, and quiet moments of reflection. For the first time in weeks, Leora allowed herself to relax, if only for a little while. "What happens now?" she asked finally, breaking the silence. Irinder smiled. "We keep moving forward, one step at a time." Silra reached out, placing a gentle hand on Leora's arm. "And we remember why we started this journey, to create a world where everyone belongs." Leora looked up at the stars, their light twinkling like promises of a new dawn. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she knew they would face them together. Because in the end, it wasn't about being human or hybrid. It was about being alive. And that was worth fighting for.